Mike. The Senate notes that the federal government, in its fight against corruption, in order to plug the presumed highly proliferated leakages, wastages, slippages surrounding the fuel subsidy, as well as in an attempt to end controversial subsidy regime, on May 11, 2016, announced increase in fuel subsidy price from 87 naira to between 135 and 145 naira per litre. Aware that at the inauguration of the present government on May 29, 2023, the president took a bold step to announce a total removal of the fuel subsidy, noting that the scheme has increasingly favored the rich more than the poor. Recognizes that the federal government's interest in exiting the subsidy regime was in line with its policy to reduce costs of governance and desire to eliminate corrupt practices surrounding the scheme through diversion and smuggling of the products into border countries, as well as introduce fair competition in the downstream sector. Informed that an NPCL, within the period of subsidy, a subsidy exit attempt, substituted the term subsidy with under recovery without any recourse to the National Assembly or supervision by any other arm of the government. The Senate observed that while an NPCL within 10 years, 2006 and 2015, claimed that about 170 billion as under recovery, the same NNPCL within 13 months, January 2018 to January 2019, claimed a whopping sum of 843.121 billion naira as under recovery. Concerned that the then Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA, published in its website figures that contradicted NNPCL's daily under recovery claims within the same period. Also concerned that the federal government appropriated 1.42 trillion and 4.3 trillion naira for petrol subsidy in 2021 and 2022 respectively, while 3.6 trillion was appropriated for petrol subsidy for 6 months ending June 2023. Worried that NNPCL's arbitrarily and unsupervised direct deductions from the country's crude oil revenue without recourse to any enabling law contravenes Section 89, 1C and 1D of the 1999 Constitution as amended, and does not speak well of the good intentions of the federal government, especially in the fight against corruption. And also worried that the uninvestigated and alarming cost of under-recovery / direct deductions of an NPCL without necessary checks has led to great misunderstanding of government's good intentions on subsidy removal. The Senate accordingly resolved to constitute an ad hoc committee to holistically investigate all controversies surrounding subsidy and the under-recovery regime. 2. Investigate the group Chief Executive Officer GCEO of NNPCL to brief the Senate on its under-recovery expenditures and the company's position on subsidy removal of the present administration. Mandate the Committee on Downstream Petroleum Sector, when constituted, to constantly monitor, scrutinize, approve midstream and downstream spending of NNPCL. And the fourth but not the least, urge the NNPCL in conjunction with some major international oil companies, IOCs, in Nigeria to form 3 different consortium and build 3 refineries, one each of the consortium to stabilize our oil market, give value to our currency, and stabilize our economy. I so move.
Thank you very much, Senator Patrick Ndebuzi.
SP, go ahead to pass my comments. Should I?
You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to commend once again the mover of this motion. It is very timely, and it is a motion that is of concern to every Nigerian as it is now. First, the issue of subsidy, okay, is so annoying because we have all along been subsidizing the neighboring countries. Not only subsidizing Nigerians, we've been subsidizing the neighboring countries. Most of the a significant percentage of the fuel subsidized in Nigeria finds its ways to neighboring countries such as Cameroon, Niger, and other neighboring countries. So it is really painful that we have all along subsidized neighboring countries when in essence we cannot adequately take care of ourselves. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, sir, more worrisome is the fact that a significant percentage of the fund being used for this subsidy is borrowed, all along was borrowed. You don't borrow money, you don't borrow fund to subsidize. You borrow money for productive purposes, especially revenue generating projects. Okay? And that has contributed partially to where we are today, where Nigeria is in a state of...
Chief Whip, can you keep the chamber silent, please? Chief Whip. Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay? Because of the large sums of money being borrowed to fund subsidy, Nigeria has itself today been subjected to what we call debt peonage system. Debt peonage system is a state of perpetual indebtedness. That is where we have been all along, and we need to wriggle ourselves out of that. Okay? I want to commend the President of the country for the bold step he has taken to remove the subsidy. But more importantly, I also want to commend him for trying to redistribute our wealth, because it's like taking wealth from a few hands to the generality of Nigerians. Having said that, Mr. President, the utilization of the savings arising from the removal of the subsidy is equally very important, and that is where our oversight function comes to play. Okay, those monies recovered or that are going to be saved from the discontinuance of fuel subsidy must be used to revive some of the ailing companies in Nigeria, in particular Ajakuta Steel Complex, Itakwe Iron Ore in Kogi State, Oshogo Iron Steel Rolling Mill, Katsina Steel Rolling Mill, Aba Textiles, okay, Katsina Steel Mill, Aba Textiles, and some other textile companies in the north, Ariwa Textiles, for example. Those monies should be used appropriately to fund those projects, revive those projects. Those projects will create a lot of employment opportunities. They will create a lot of revenue for the government. They will also have potentials for foreign exchange earnings. So I want to wholeheartedly support this motion and the prayers arising therefrom. Thank you, Mr. President.
I must commend the mover of this motion, Senator Patrick Ndebuzi. This motion is not only timely, but this motion has come at a time that this Senate must take a bold step in looking at the plight of ordinary Nigerians who are suffering very heavily as a result of petroleum subsidy removal. Mr. President, much as I want to thank the President and Commander-in-Chief for removing fuel subsidy, it is also important that when the subsidy is removed, we have to look at the palliatives to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. Mr. President, much as we are going to make a lot of gain from subsidy removal, we also have to look at the sufferings of our people today. Commuters are the final end users of petrol, and they are suffering most. If you want to commute from one small place to another small place now, you have to pay heavily for that. But Mr. President, I must take our mind back to some of the problems that gave rise to what we are suffering today. Is what is known as turnaround maintenance. A situation where NNPC and Ministry of Petroleum started the issue of turnaround maintenance and started giving contracts to companies that did not build the refineries to come and maintain the refineries. I don't know how that vocabulary of turnaround maintenance started, because that is where our problem started. A company will build a refinery, you will leave that company that built the refinery, you will appoint another company to come and maintain the refinery. I don't know where that is done all over the world. So that is where this problem started, and all our refineries were shut down. Today we can't boast of any refinery that is producing. Mr. President, my knowledge of crude is that even in villages, in some states where they do bunkering, Mr. President, they even refine this crude along the road. So that means that to refine the product is not a very difficult thing. Why is it that we don't even have a law mandating IOCs, all the oil companies in Nigeria, to at least refine 30% of what they produce? How can you produce crude in Nigeria? You will export the same crude to another country, they will refine the same crude you produce in Nigeria, then you go and buy it at a very exorbitant rate. This is the essence of this refinery. So I believe that the cartel that are involved in this refinery should be brought to book, because it's a very serious matter. Now, the NNPC or the Minister of Petroleum over the years have been budgeting astronomical figures for fuel subsidy. This is what is causing the problem. Even the budget of 2023, beginning from January 1 to June 30, is 3-point-something trillion. So assuming that that is allowed, it means that we are going to have about 7 trillion for this year on fuel subsidy. Mr. President, I think that that issue has to be looked into. In conclusion, Mr. President, I believe that there is need to look at the entire oil subsidy thing, because I don't think it is going well for the people of this country. The cartels must be brought to book. The NNPC themselves that are doing this issue of under recovery, we also have to look at it. That is why I'm saying that this motion have come at a very auspicious time, and we must utilize the opportunity of this motion to dig deep into the problems of oil subsidy in Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. President.
From 67 million liters per day to about 48 million. What it means is that the difference we are seeing today, which is not even enough, I know that is going to come down. And I knew that we have not reduced the vehicular movements we have in this country, because it is the only source at the moment which we move. So, who was taking almost 18.5 million liters every day? So, I think this motion came at the right time, and I believe that if we looked at it in-depthly, we will be able to do more savings for this country. And the problem with this is that most of the people that are committing such atrocities in this country still move very freely, and you give them the opportunity. When you close one, they try to open another way of making it. So I believe this is the right time for this. As a corrective Senate, we must look at this and bring those people to book. You cannot be taking 18.5 million liters of fuel, and today we can see that that's why the cost of petrol that have gone up, the movement have not reduced. So there is something that we need to look at in the Senate, and this motion, I think, is another part to getting to a solution to these issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Mongo.
Distinguished Senators, my name is Mohammed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. As rightly alluded to by the previous speakers, this motion is apt and germane, especially against the background of the controversy that the issue of fuel subsidy has generated in this country. Before I make my submissions, Mr. President, distinguished senators, I wish to state that I adopt all the submissions made by the previous speakers as mine, and want to further add that the issue of fuel subsidy has been not only the elephant in the room, but the big elephant in the room that has constituted a cock in the wheel of our developmental aspirations and bringing dividends of democracy to the doorsteps of our constituents, especially against the backdrop of the huge amount of resources that we deploy in the name of subsidizing fuel. And as rightly alluded to by the previous speakers, as a result of the high cost of fuel in neighboring countries of Cameroon, Chad, Niger Republic, and my constituency happens to be neighboring Chad Republic, we are aware that a lot of smuggling activities goes on. These neighboring countries virtually depend on the fuel produced in Nigeria. So all along, we are subsidizing neighboring countries to the detriment of Nigerian citizens, our constituents. And distinguished senators, I can vividly recall that in the 7th Assembly, this issue of fuel subsidy has been investigated thoroughly by the 7th Assembly, and report has been submitted to the relevant authorities. And in the course of the investigation, a lot of things that are not supposed to be were unveiled. And government should have, right from the word go, at that period in time, have withdrawn the issue of subsidy because of what the investigation has unveiled. But subsequent governments do not have the political will to withdraw the subsidy. And we thank this government for taking the bull by the horn and gathering all the political will and clout to withdraw the subsidy in the interest of Nigerians. And now we are saving a lot of money which we can use to deploy for the purpose of bridging our infrastructure needs. And in conclusion, my humble advice is that in view of the hardship unleashed on Nigerians as a result of the withdrawal of fuel subsidy, there is a need for the government being responsible and responsive to the yearnings and sufferings of Nigerians to come up with ways and means of giving succor and cushioning the effect of the fuel subsidy withdrawal on Nigerians. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Senate President, for this opportunity to contribute on this very important motion. Thank you.
My support with my distinguished brother for raising this all-important motion. I want to say that, as we all know, subsidy is not as if subsidy is bad. But however, subsidy can be green, it can be yellow, and it can be red. When it's green, it is permissible. When it is red, it's no more permissible. And that is the stage we are in, where corruption are taking over. No government will want his people to suffer unduly, but when the intention of government is being exploited to the detriment of the populace, there is need for government to take action, and that's exactly what the government has done. But having done that, you expect the benefits accruable to this government policy to be used for the benefit of Nigerians, and that is why we need to investigate, as enunciated and itemized by my distinguished brother. And the Constitution, we are still acting in line with the Constitution. I said that wherever the Senate or the legislative arm, we have the legislative competence to act when we suspect fraud in any governmental action or policy. And exactly that is what our brother has alluded to. Need for the Senate to understand, call, ask questions, and take corrective measure and necessarily supervision that will benefit the populace of this great country. So, in essence, I'm supportive of this great motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Wadada.
The importance of this motion cannot be overemphasized, and I wouldn't want to dwell on the aspect of the advantages that have got to do with removal of subsidy, but rather I will want to talk more on what will accrue to the nation if the savings that will be gotten as a result of removal of subsidy are injected to the right sector. First and foremost, the President of Nigeria today, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has always been on the side of welfare for the citizens of Nigeria. I mean, he has always over the years propagated welfare for the citizens of Nigeria. So if these savings are utilized judiciously, it will ensure welfare for the citizens of the country, and if injected into the various sectors or sectors of our real sector, that will provide, will rejuvenate the real sector, and rejuvenation of the real sector will provide mass employment for the citizens of this country. And of course, again, rejuvenation of the real sector will make Nigeria an exporter nation rather than an importer nation. And the more we export, the more foreign exchange we get for the country, and of course our foreign reserves will as well be beefed up. So those are the areas that I feel I should put a little more emphasis on as to the gains of the removal of subsidy if the savings that will accrue as a result of the removal are utilized judiciously. I so contribute, Mr.
Distinguished Senator Darlington.
Mr. Senate President, I want to come from another flank based on what Senator Mongonu said. I know quite well that things that has to do with this subsidy has been investigated by several other houses prior to this time. But one question remains: what level of compliance was given to the resolutions of all those investigations? Mr. Senate President, I know we have all it takes, like I said the other day, to push and pull every string that will make the nation move better and forward by way of oversight. And I know quite well that this issue is causing a whole lot of problem today in Nigeria, 'subsidy', because it was not abetted at the right time. But one question remains: what level of compliance was given to the resolutions of all those investigations? Mr. Senate President, I know we have all it takes, like I said the other day, to push and pull every string that will make the nation move better and forward by way of oversight. And I know quite well that this issue is causing a whole lot of problem today in Nigeria, 'subsidy', because it was not abetted at the right time. Mr. Senate President, I want to say that I've seen the prayers here that we should set up ad hoc committee, which will still look into this, because the entire Nigeria today, everybody is feeling the beat of this prolonged oil subsidy, which we know that's a total scam on our economy. Mr. Senate President, my contribution this morning is that whenever we set this ad hoc committee, if we resolve so, that we must work hard, that their prayers must completely and totally be complied with. And if we are not ready to do that, it's better we don't set up any ad hoc committee. But if we must do that, we must make sure that the executive strictly, because I can see that the president, having pushed with a great will to remove the subsidy, which had not been done over the other regimes, he has done his own best. Our own bit is to make sure, as the legislature that have all the powers to investigate and at the same time oversight the executive and all the webs that has to do with this oil subsidy, no matter whose us is God, we must effectively make sure that every prayer that we resolve must be complied with and adhered strictly. Thank you, Mr. President.
My colleagues, my name is Karimi Sunday. I represent Kogi West. Mr. President, this motion is a welcome development for our country. Facts and figure. From the report of NNPC last month, NNPC said they made a saving of over 400 billion within 1 month of subsidy removal. It is either that 400 billion was stolen from Nigeria directly, or it was taken to neighbor fuel what that amount was taken to neighboring country to dash them Nigerian money freely. So what President Tinubu did by removal of fuel subsidy is to say, no, this wastage cannot continue. Saving 400 billion just for 1 month. There is need for Nigeria to know who has been taking this huge amount from Nigeria monthly. Those people must be brought to justice. We cannot just say that we have removed fuel subsidy, we have closed the books. No, there is need to investigate. A lot of people have benefited in this corruption, and if possible, we have to get Nigerian money back from those people. That is why I think this motion is apt, and I think we have to work on all the prayers of this motion. Thank you.
So the two senators from the
voice on these very, very important motions. First of all, I want to commend the mover of these motions, because the motion is very apt at the moment. Mr. President, I also want to allude myself with the contributions of Senator Munguno and distinguished Senator Osita. Because of this fuel subsidy removal, Mr. President, you can see that the increase in transport fares has skyrocketed, leaving the motorists and the travelers at the mercy of God. Therefore, I also want to commend His Excellency President Bola Tinubu for jinx-breaking decision of the first subsidy removal against all odds. And in doing that, the federal government is urged to make available the palliatives that will bring succor to Nigerians. These palliatives should include the provision of buses for interstate commercial transportations by all Nigerians at a half-price current market reality. Also, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I suggest, because of the increase on the transport fare, shuttle buses to all recognized campuses from institutions of higher learning and hospitals across that will reduce the impact of students, workers, as well as those desirous of visiting, going to the hospitals or medical centers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Last week, and we all agreed that instead of setting up the ad hoc committee, we should wait until when the standing committee will be in place. And this motion before us has to do with petroleum products, has to do with investigating the NNPC. I also strongly believe that that same position we took during the Senator Karimi's motion should be applied to this as well. By allowing this motion to be, we have debated it, but allow the standing committee of the Senate to be in place so that they can look into this. Because if you look at the quantum of money involved in this, I believe we need a very detailed investigation as to what has transpired during the subsidy regime and going forward. So I would be suggesting that we have a standing committee in place before we commit this motion. That is.
So, in other words, and having had the seconder, those who are in support that this the motions as debated be referred to the standing committees when in place, say aye. Those against say nay. So the ayes have it. But we can go ahead with even the second prayer. Invite the group chief executive officer. It's the same thing. So we don't need to. Third, mandate the committee, the same thing. And then fourth, urge the same thing. So let me thank distinguished Senator Ndubweze. Am I right? Yeah, distinguished Senator Patrick Ndubweze for this motion, which has elicited a lot of things that are concerns to not just the Nigerian Senate, but to the generality of the Nigerian public, and hope that now that we have referred all the prayers hearing to all the committees from downstream, upstream, finance and all that, that once the committees are in place, we'll have a joint committee looking into all the prayers and doing a holistic appraisal of what went on in this subsidy regime. I also note that the Senate has, in the course of the debate, commended Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for the decision to even remove this subsidy. So I think that must also be noted for the gentlemen of the press, that we are very excited for the courage, and we look forward to the palliatives that will come to ameliorate the sufferings that the decision could have engendered on Nigerians. But I think it was one decision that had to be taken, and it is good that it is taken in our time during the 10th Senate. Thank you, gentlemen, for your contributions. Leader of the Senate.